Welcome to our channel, Book by Book. Today we're beginning an in-depth summary of a really powerful self-help guide, one that feels like a profound antidote to, the relentless pace of modern life. It's called The Practicing Mind, Developing Focus and Discipline in Your Life by Thomas M. Sterner.
It is. And this book, which came out in 2012, is so fascinating because its philosophy, it comes from a really grounded place. Stirner isn't some motivational speaker or a psychologist. He's actually a highly skilled piano technician
Right.
and a lifelong student of just building skills. His insights are drawn from decades of just watching people, musicians, athletes, really focused professionals who achieved this deep, enduring mastery. He realized they all shared something,
A specific approach.
a specific and kind of unconventional approach to practice and progress.
And that unconventional approach, it really gets at the central flaw of our culture, doesn't it? I mean, we live in a world that is just fundamentally obsessed with speed, with instant gratification, and the final achievement.
A product.
Exactly. The product, the outcome, the win,
Yes.
the finished project.
Yeah.
And that focus, that relentless product-centered thinking is what generates so much stress.
Oh, absolutely. It leads to crippling overwhelm, anxiety, and, the modern epidemic of burnout.
It really does.
Stirner's work is like a complete, a mental operating system overhaul.
Yeah.
If you find yourself consistently frustrated by your progress or maybe feeling a little inadequate even when you succeed, this book is for you. The core idea is simple, but its application is, well, it's transformative.
And what is that core idea?
That mastery and inner peace, they aren't found at the destination. They're actually the natural result of shifting your attention entirely to the process of taking deliberate, high-quality, present-moment steps.
So when you talk about the practicing mindset, it sounds like it's more than just a technique. It's a whole philosophy of living, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a complete shift in your psychological orientation. It means you consciously prioritize process over product. You cultivate patience over impatience, and you actively choose awareness over just running on autopilot.
Right.
And it's not about brute force willpower. It's about slow, small, consistent repetitions. Stirner's foundational concept is that the mind is trainable, just like a physical muscle. When you continuously bring your attention back to the present moment, when you accept the difficulty without judging yourself, you are literally strengthening your mental discipline, your clarity, and your emotional stability. You become internally resilient.
So our mission today is to dive deep into these concepts. We want to extract Stirner's 7 core lessons, explore his practical frameworks, and make sure you walk away with simple, actionable steps.
So you can immediately begin cultivating your own practicing mind.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning with lesson 1, focusing on the process, not the product. And like we said, it sounds intuitive. Everyone knows the journey is important. But Stirner argues our entire system, from education to advertising, actively trains us out of this mindset.
It does. It trains us to fear anything that isn't the final measurable outcome. And that product-centered mindset creates what Stirner calls the problem of the gap. And this, he says, is the psychological source of nearly all anxiety related to self-improvement.
How does that gap manifest in our daily thoughts? What does that look like?
Well, it shows up when you fixate on the ideal future goal. The finished result, the perfect outcome, the advanced skill level. Your mind instantly calculates this enormous distance, the gap between where you are right now,
Messy beginner.
a messy beginner, exactly, and where you want to be, the professional ideal. This fixation generates paralyzing anxiety, intense impatience because you want that gap to close now. And of course, harsh, debilitating self-criticism. Stirner calls this whole destructive cycle chasing the future ideal. We're constantly living in a mental space of inadequacy.
So in essence, we suffer because we're mentally living in the future, worrying about a result we haven't achieved yet, instead of operating in the only moment where action is actually possible, which is right now.
Exactly. That is the core insight. The power of process thinking is this profound realization that you cannot improve yesterday and you can improve tomorrow. Real, tangible improvement happens only when you are fully engaged in the step you are taking right now.
Right now.
When you prioritize the quality of the current moment's action, results they stop being a source of stress. They become nothing more than the inevitable, natural byproduct of a long series of focused, present moment actions.
That Feels like a massive relief. Just removing the emotional burden from the destination.
Yeah.
Let's make this tangible. Sterner has this great example of someone learning the guitar.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. If you approach the guitar in that product-centered way, you're just constantly stressed. You compare your buzzing chords and your slow finger movements to the sound of a professional song.
And you feel that gap.
You feel that gap, and you feel shame and frustration. Your goal is the perfect concert performance, and your current reality is nowhere near it. But the practicing mind, it immediately shifts the focus to the micro tasks.
Which would be what, precisely? Like the very small details.
The smallest details. You concentrate only on placing your ring finger correctly on the fret. You listen intently to the single sound that one string is making. Maybe you focus on the rhythm of your breath. You practice just one tiny chord transition, maybe 3 times, but with intense awareness.
So the big goal disappears.
The grand goal of playing the whole perfect song just vanishes from your mind. You've eliminated the emotional weight of the final result and replaced it with intense, focused quality in this one tiny drop of effort. And that, paradoxically, is how learning accelerates, by slowing down the mental ambition.
The famous analogy of the garden perfectly captures that non-reactive timeline that process thinking demands.
It's a necessary metaphor because we're so conditioned to the speed of technology, you know. If you plant seeds, you cannot, through force of will or frustration, make those plants grow faster.
Right.
Checking them hourly, digging them up to assess their root growth, or yelling at them for not being mature plants yet, it's absurd.
It is absurd, but that's exactly what we do to ourselves.
It's precisely how we treat ourselves when learning a difficult skill. We feel impatience, and we dig up our own habits. Mastery, like a garden, happens through steady, consistent daily nourishment. That's the process. You trust the unseen mechanism, you provide the daily care, and the growth happens in its own time. You just cannot rush consolidation.
And this brings us to what I think is the anchor quote of the entire book.
Mm.
When you focus on the process, you free yourself from the tyranny of the result.
That phrase, the tyranny of the result, is just so powerful. That tyranny is what steals the joy from the act of creation or learning. It makes us feel inadequate, stressed, and incomplete until we hit that moment of achievement. Process thinking grants you emotional stability and confidence right now because your worth is tied to the quality of your effort, not the external score.
Now, to be clear, Sterner isn't saying we should just wander around aimlessly. We have to bring in lesson 7 here, which is about having a healthy relationship with outcomes. The idea that goals are guides, not burdens.
Yeah, goals are absolutely essential, but they have to serve a specific non-emotional function. They're like compasses. They show you the direction to steer the ship. They provide clarity. But the moment you let them become burdens or external measures of your immediate self-worth, you know, I failed if I don't hit this target this month, they become counterproductive. They're just psychological pressure.
So the ideal mindset he advocates is sort of a 2-step process. Phase 1, set a clear directional goal. And phase 2 is to immediately release your emotional attachment to it.
Exactly. You define the destination clearly, and then your focus shifts 100% to the quality of the steps you're taking right now. You use the horizon, the goal to steer, but you spend all your attention on the waters immediately in front of you.
Right.
Are you steering correctly? Are you maintaining awareness? Are you moving forward efficiently? Focusing on the immediate process is what ensures you actually arrive. And you do it without the debilitating stress that constantly worrying about the horizon would bring.
The ultimate benefit of this reframing is pretty profound. You get motivation without the crushing pressure, clarity without obsessive fixation.
And sustainable achievement without the typical psychological toll of burnout.
Right. You find joy in the journey because, well, the journey is where you actually spend all your time. Okay, moving on. This is where Sterner really challenges our internal mechanisms for dealing with difficulty. He argues that our internal suffering when we practice comes almost entirely from our internal dialogue, our self-talk, not from the difficulty of the task itself.
Right.
And this brings us to lesson 2. Patience is a skill, not a personality trait.
This point is so important because it immediately gives you agency. Most of us, we internalize impatience as some sort of moral failing or an unchangeable characteristic, like, oh, I'm just not a patient person.
Yeah, I've said that myself.
We all have. Sterner insists patience is practiced. It's deliberately cultivated. Impatience, he says, fundamentally stems from an internal self-imposed story about how quickly we should be progressing.
It's that internal friction when we resist what's happening right now. We're basically saying, this moment is unsatisfactory, it needs to change now, I should be better already.
Yeah.
That mental tension is the suffering.
That mental tension is the gap, just manifesting emotionally. And patience is simply the choice to stop resisting the current reality. It's accepting I am where I am and this is the time it's going to take. And he provides concrete ways to cultivate the skill, almost like physical drills for the mind.
What are those practical steps? How do you actually practice patience?
First, he says you have to become acutely aware of your impatient thoughts, but without judging them. Just notice them. Oh, there's the thought that I should be done with this already.
Okay.
Second, you intentionally slow down your physical and mental movements. Slowing down creates a kind of mental buffer zone. Third, you have to actively appreciate tiny microscopic improvements instead of demanding these massive leaps. And critically, you just accept that mastery follows its own biological and psychological timeline.
I think the meditation example is probably the most relatable way to frame this.
It really is. When you start meditating, your mind is like a wild horse. It's restless, it's bored, it's demanding distraction. And those feelings, the boredom, the restlessness, the intense urge to check the clock, they're not signs of failure.
Yeah.
They are normal signs of an untrained or resisting mind. By practicing sitting with that discomfort, by gently returning your attention every single time it wanders, you are doing more than just meditating. You're fundamentally building emotional endurance and patience. You're showing your mind that discomfort is not a signal to quit. It's a sign to gently recommit.
It totally redefines how we view mental discomfort.
Right.
We can see it the same way a runner views the burning in their muscles during a race. You don't panic. You recognize that burning sensation as the physiological process of building endurance.
Exactly.
And that mental discomfort during practice is the sign that psychological growth is happening right beneath the surface.
Precisely. And this patience, it translates directly into long-term efficiency. You make better decisions, you're less prone to emotional volatility in daily life, and you're way less likely to quit during that inevitable learning dip, as Stirner puts it. Patience is not the absence of action, it is the acceptance of the process of action.
Action coupled with acceptance.
It's action coupled with profound, non-judgmental acceptance of the timeline.
Now, building directly on that idea of acceptance, let's get to lesson 5. Let go of judgment and self-criticism. This is the source of that enormous, unnecessary emotional friction that just derails so many of our efforts.
That internal critic is like a heavy backpack we force ourselves to wear while hiking uphill. It's brutal. Judgment and self-criticism are catastrophic emotional sinkholes. They consume massive amounts of energy that could be going toward focused work.
Right.
They intensify frustration, and they make the learning process feel like a punishment. And if practice feels like punishment, your mind, which is driven by survival instinct, will naturally resist and sabotage it.
So, if the default setting for most of us is that relentless internal critic, what's the alternative that Stirner provides?
The alternative is to shift entirely to the mindset of the neutral observer. This means noticing data without attaching blame or shame or some emotional narrative to it.
Wait, give me an example.
For example, the untrained mind defaults to, I am an idiot, I made that mistake again, I'll never learn this. The practicing mind, using the neutral observer, says instead, I see I made a mistake on that transition, interesting. Let me look at why that happened. Or, my attention drifted for 5 minutes. That happens. Let me gently come back. It's observation, data collection, and adjustment with zero emotional friction.
This shift is absolutely vital for managing those inevitable setbacks which happen in every single learning process. Let's take the common habit-breaking example. Say you set a goal to write for an hour every day, and you miss 2 days in a row.
The untrained, judgment-heavy mind defaults immediately to this massive narrative of shame and failure. You're failing again, you always break habits. This proves you have no willpower, so why even bother trying tomorrow?
And that just tanks the whole thing.
It derails the entire effort, leads to a total abandonment of the habit. The practicing mind, though, using the neutral observer, dismisses the narrative. It focuses only on the path forward. It says, I missed those 2 days. That is data. That's okay. Today is a fresh practice, and I will write for 20 minutes. It's an immediate, powerful, emotional reset that prioritizes consistency over perfection.
So by systematically dropping that heavy backpack of judgment, you dramatically improve your learning efficiency. You conserve mental energy.
And you build the essential emotional resilience you need to stay consistent, even when the task is really hard.
Right. Stirner's philosophy demands that practice feels like exploration and curiosity, not a performance evaluation. Okay, so if we accept the premise that we have to focus entirely on the process, then we need the mental tools to actually stay in that present process. This brings us squarely to lesson 3. Be fully present. Sterner insists that awareness changes everything.
He argues that awareness, not high motivation or some rigid, self-punishing willpower, is the true bedrock of all discipline and skill acquisition. Without awareness, we operate entirely on autopilot. We're just driven by impulses, unconscious habits, external distractions. We drift, we make errors, we derail before we even realize we've left the path.
And awareness is the mechanism that allows us to catch that drift instantly, right?
Exactly. Awareness is a gentle, continuous stream of noticing that acts as immediate feedback. It lets you catch your mind wandering, identify the self-criticism the moment it surfaces, and therefore allows you to redirect yourself without judgment. This immediate feedback loop is what drastically accelerates the learning rate. You are connected to the reality of the task, not the phantom of the outcome.
Let's apply this to the most ubiquitous modern challenge, managing distractions like our phones or notifications.
The untrained autopilot mind just automatically picks up the device every few minutes. It's reflexive and unconscious habit. The practicing mind, however, cultivates the awareness you need to catch the impulse instantly. It recognizes that feeling in your hand, the mental flicker of distraction, and says, almost verbally, "Oh, there's the urge to check the phone again. I recognize that impulse. Let me redirect my eyes and my attention back to the document."
The power is in catching the impulse before the action.
It is. Over time, the mere repeated act of catching that impulse weakens its magnetic pull. You are training your neural pathways to pause and choose rather than just react instantly. This trains the brain to return to the intended task more quickly and naturally.
I often think of awareness as just turning on the lights in a dark room. Once the lights are on, you stop bumping into furniture, or in this case, you stop bumping into your own self-defeating thoughts and impulses.
That's a perfect visual. And to cultivate this, Sterner recommends a few techniques. One is intentionally slowing down your physical movements, walking slower, performing tasks slower, because rushing limits your ability to observe. Another is speaking more slowly and consciously, and crucially, paying attention to the mundane transitions between tasks, that little space between closing one window and opening the next. This prevents mental clutter. Awareness accelerates mastery because, as Stoner says, awareness is the first step to mastery because you can't change what you can't observe.
And once we have awareness, we can apply it to lesson 6, which redefines a word that has become so tainted by harshness. Discipline, Sterner calls it. Discipline comes from gentle repetition, not force.
This is a huge reframe. When people hear discipline, they often visualize rigid effort, pushing through pain, Spartan self-denial. Sterner dismantles that image completely. True, sustainable discipline is not about forcing yourself. It is about cultivating gentle, consistent redirection. He provides this magnificent definition. Discipline equals repeated returning.
It's the constant, gentle re-steering, rather than one massive, heroic, but unsustainable effort.
Look at the masters of attention meditators. Their discipline isn't built on sitting perfectly still for hours on end. It's built entirely on the mundane, gentle act of returning their attention to the breath again and again, thousands of times.
Right.
They treat every moment of wandering not as a failure, but as an opportunity to practice the return. This builds consistency, and Sterner is adamant. Consistency beats intensity every single time. A writer who shows up for a focused, non-judgmental hour every day will achieve far more than someone who tries to brute force a 14-hour writing binge once a month.
And the gentle nature of this approach is wonderfully illustrated by the training of a puppy.
It's a fantastic, necessary analogy. You don't train a puppy by yelling at it or shaming it or punishing it into obedience. That just breeds anxiety and resistance. You gently guide it back every single time it wanders off the path. When your mind is learning a new skill or habit, it requires the same gentle, non-reactive guidance. You just gently redirect it. This approach builds long-term consistency, emotional durability, and ultimately real discipline that feels peaceful and intentional, rather than stressful and punitive. Discipline becomes a process of gentle adjustment, not a moral struggle against some internal weakness.
Okay, this next lesson, lesson 4, this one provides so much comfort to anyone who has felt that crushing disappointment of hitting a wall. We have to accept that progress is nonlinear. We need to embrace the natural rhythm of growth.
Our societal conditioning makes us expect learning to look like a steep, clean graph line sloping upwards forever. But the reality, across every single domain, physical, intellectual, musical, society, is that progress is inherently messy.
Yeah.
It includes long, frustrating plateaus, confusing setbacks where you feel like you've actually gotten worse, and then these sudden, rapid breakthroughs.
Hmm.
If you expect that mythical straight line, you perceive the inevitable plateau as a catastrophic failure, and you quit right before the skill consolidates.
So what exactly is happening, psychologically and neurologically, during those periods of stagnation? Why does it feel like we're making zero progress?
Sterner calls this the consolidation period. It feels like stagnation, but your mind is incredibly busy integrating new patterns beneath the surface. Your brain is basically shifting the skill from conscious, effortful control, where you have to think about every step, to subconscious, automatic control. And this requires building and refining neural pathways.
I see.
So you might not see external visible improvements, but the skill is being accumulated, integrated into muscle memory and deep psychological memory.
So the lack of visible progress is actually a sign that the brain is working hard on that integration phase.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's the silent processing that comes before mastery. You might not feel faster, but your brain is building the automaticity that will eventually make you faster. It's the filling the bucket analogy again, but it's worth looking at more closely.
Yeah, let's elaborate on that. How does that bucket analogy protect the learner from quitting during that dip?
Sterner compares consistent practice to filling a large bucket with individual drops of water. You put in effort, drop after drop after drop, day after day. You look inside the bucket, and for weeks, even months, you see no visible change. It feels futile.
Totally.
But you trust the process, and you keep adding drops. Then suddenly, the bucket reaches its saturation point, it overflows, and the skill clicks. That moment, that breakthrough, is only possible because of the thousands of invisible drops you added during the perceived stagnation. Every single drop of non-judgmental, present-moment effort counted, even those moments when you felt like absolutely nothing was happening.
This nonlinear understanding is the single most important defense against quitting. It completely reframes setbacks. Setbacks stop being personalized evidence that, "Oh, I'm not cut out for this," and they become accepted, normal parts of the growth rhythm.
It allows you to sustain practice when it is boring, and boredom is often the true test of discipline. Mastery unfolds slowly, patiently, and then, often unexpectedly, the acceleration phase begins.
Okay, let's integrate the practical framework Sterner uses to help us manage this frustrating nonlinear rhythm. The first, and arguably the most powerful tool in the book, is the do, observe, correct cycle.
This three-step loop is the engine of deliberate, non-judgmental practice. It's designed to replace emotional reaction with analytical curiosity.
Let's walk through the application of that cycle in, say, 3 different fields to show how versatile it is. Maybe a mental task, a physical task, and an emotional one.
Perfect. For a mental task, let's say writing, you write a difficult sentence. You immediately observe, you notice without judgment that the sentence structure is clumsy. You don't call yourself a bad writer, you just observe the data. Then you correct, you make a small structural adjustment to the sentence for the next try.
Okay. Physical task, like a golf swing, you swing the club, you immediately observe, you feel your hips swayed a little, causing a slice, no anger, no frustration, just data gathering. Then you correct. You focus solely on stabilizing your lower body on the very next swing.
And the emotional task, which is maybe the hardest, someone says something challenging, you feel that surge of defensiveness. You immediately observe. You notice the tightening in your chest, the urge to snap back. You interrupt the emotional reaction and just observe the feeling. Then you correct, you pause for 3 seconds and choose a non-reactive, measured response. This eliminates emotional friction entirely and focuses only on data and adjustment. It makes learning extremely efficient in all domains.
He then condenses this whole philosophy into the practicing mind formula.
Yeah.
What are the 4 specific ingredients that we need to sustain this state?
Okay, so the practicing mind, when it's operating optimally, requires these 4 elements at the same time. 1, intentional action. You have to be present in the doing. That's the DO step.
Okay.
2, present moment awareness. You have to be noticing what is happening right now. That's the observe step. 3, non-judgment. The complete removal of emotional friction, which allows for easy correction. And 4, mindfulness of small improvements. Actively acknowledging the tiny victories and the effort you're putting in, which rewards the process itself. When you maintain these 4 ingredients, the feeling of struggle just dissipates, and steady, enjoyable growth takes over.
And finally, a concept that is really counterintuitive in our high-speed world, the power of slowing down.
Stirner argues this is a form of intelligent energy management, not laziness. When you intentionally slow down your typing, your walk, your processing speed, you dramatically increase your awareness.
Hmm.
Increased awareness means you make fewer mistakes because you catch errors before they become significant problems. This calm state is neurologically optimal for deep learning. And crucially, slowing down prevents the mental overwhelm and burnout that comes from rushing. Slow is steady, and in skill acquisition, steady is the only thing that wins the long race.
This has been a really deep exploration of the philosophy. Now, we have to translate these concepts into immediate action. We've synthesized Stirner's guidance into 10 actionable takeaways that you can begin implementing today to cultivate your own practicing mind.
Yeah, treat these as immediate mental challenges. These are small, deliberate changes to your internal monologue and your daily routines.
Okay, number one, choose one simple daily task like washing dishes, walking, writing an email, and perform it intentionally slower than normal. Use this to build awareness of your current hurried autopilot habits.
Number 2, actively practice the do, observe, correct cycle. The moment you make any mistake, large or small, stop the internal critical voice. Focus solely on the small analytical adjustment needed for the next attempt.
Number three, apply the goal framework. Set a clear directional goal and then immediately mentally forget the goal. Use it only as a compass, never as a source of self-inflicted pressure.
Number 4, discipline your focus to the next small step and only the next small step. Stop wasting mental energy worrying about the end result. What is the single high-quality action in front of you right now?
Number five, reframe frustration. The next time you feel that heavy feeling of annoyance, notice it as a signal, not a failure. Frustration just means your brain is wrestling with a new pattern. It's confirmation that deep learning is actually taking place.
Number 6, build structured rituals for practice. This removes the need for motivation. Consistency is achieved by showing up at the same time, in the same place, and starting the same way, regardless of how you feel. Consistency beats intensity every time.
Number seven, treat mistakes purely as objective information, not an indictment of your identity. A mistake simply informs your next correction. It does not define who you are.
Number 8, practice patience deliberately. The next time you feel that immediate surge of impatience or the desire to rush, just practice pausing for a full 2 seconds before you react or move.
Number 9, reduce and eventually eliminate time spent comparing yourself to others on social media. Stirner emphasizes that your personal growth journey is inherently unique, and external comparison is the fastest way to derail your own momentum.
And finally, number 10, celebrate the process regularly. Take time each week to acknowledge the effort, the quality of your attention, and the consistency you maintain, rather than waiting to celebrate only the external results you achieved. Reward the process.
These 10 steps, applied gently and consistently, really encapsulate the core practical philosophy of the practicing mind.
And what we've synthesized here is the profound cumulative effect of applying these principles. This isn't just a productivity strategy, it's a cohesive philosophy for living purposefully. When you shift to the practicing mind, you gain genuine internal control of your most valuable asset, your attention.
Yeah.
You feel less rushed and chaotic. You learn new skills faster because your mental energy isn't wasted on shame or anxiety. And most importantly, you find joy in the process itself.
It redefines discipline entirely. It shifts discipline away from harsh ambition and self-punishment and transforms it into a peaceful, mindful, consistent exploration of skill and growth. You develop lifelong internal discipline and a profound sense of inner calm because you trust your ability to consistently return to the present moment again and again.
So we'll leave you with one final thought based on Stirner's philosophy. If mastery is a natural and inevitable outcome of focused process, what area of your life right now are you habitually chasing the product instead of peacefully and mindfully enjoying the practice?
That is a wonderful and necessary question to carry forward. We sincerely hope this detailed summary of the practicing mind has been helpful. If this summary was helpful, please subscribe to Book by Book for more such helpful book summaries. Share it with others who might benefit from cultivating a practicing mind, and like the video or episode as it motivates us to keep bringing you the best book summaries.
Thank you for joining us for this Book by Book summary.
Until next time, keep practicing.